I never expected to become the main attraction at my sister's wedding. Jessica had spent months planning her perfect day down to the last detail, including exactly how she would humiliate me. As her pathetic single sister, I was seated at the far corner, introduced as still looking, and whispered about all evening. But when a handsome stranger leaned in and whispered, "Act like you're with me," everything changed. What started as a desperate attempt to save face turned into something neither of us expected, the beginning of my happily ever after, and the sweetest revenge I never planned. I stood outside the gleaming white wedding venue, clutching my invitation like it was a court summons. The elegant cursive spelling out Olivia Mitchell felt like a cruel joke, a formal request for me to witness my younger sister Jessica's triumph while being reminded of my own apparent failure. My sister and I had never been particularly close, but things had taken a toxic turn since Daniel proposed to her. Suddenly, her success in landing a wealthy corporate lawyer became her favorite weapon to wield against me. At 32, I was the unmarried sister, the career-focused one, the one who hadn't found the right person, or as Jessica loved to say with fake concern, the one who's running out of time. I smoothed down my emerald green dress, the one I'd spent 3 weeks finding and way too much money buying, and walked into the reception hall. The place was beautiful, I had to admit. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white-clothed tables adorned with blush and gold centerpieces. A live string quartet played softly in the corner. Everything was perfect, just as Jessica had demanded. Olivia, Vanessa Turner, Jessica's maid of honor, approached with a clipboard, and that particular smile people use when they're about to deliver bad news. "Let me show you to your table." I followed her across the ballroom, noticing we were walking past all the tables where my cousins were seated, past my parents' table, past tables of Jessica and Daniel's mutual friends. We kept walking until we reached a small table tucked beside the kitchen entrance, where servers bustled in and out with trays of appetizers. "Table 19, Vanessa said brightly. "Here you are." I looked at my assigned table, clearly the singles table, or as I instantly named it in my head, the rejects table. An elderly man who appeared to be napping, 2 women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, and a teenage boy furiously texting under the table. "Is this a joke?" I asked, my voice tight. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. Jessica was very specific about the seating arrangements. "You know how brides are." She patted my arm and disappeared back into the crowd. I sat down heavily, nodding hello to my tablemates who barely acknowledged me. From my isolated corner, I had a perfect view of Jessica holding court at the head table, looking radiant in her designer gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids and Daniel's groomsmen. Our parents sat at a table directly in front of them, beaming with pride. The first hour was excruciating. Jessica made sure to parade me around during the cocktail reception, introducing me to Daniel's family with pointed reminders of my single status. "This is my sister Olivia," she'd say. Her arm looped possessively through Daniel's. "She's our career woman, still focusing on her job instead of settling down. Olivia, this is Eleanor, Daniel's mother." Eleanor Cooper looked me up and down with barely disguised pity. "Oh dear, don't worry," she said, patting my arm with her manicured hand. "There's still time. My nephew didn't marry until he was 38, and they're very happy now." "Olivia's very independent," Jessica added with a laugh that made the word sound like a disease. "Aren't you, sis?" "I just haven't met the right person," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, you can't wait forever," Daniel's aunt, Mrs. Harding, chimed in. "My daughter waited too long and now she's 43 with fertility issues. Something to think about." For what felt like an eternity, I endured conversation after conversation, where Jessica's friends and Daniel's relatives offered unsolicited dating advice. Each interaction felt carefully orchestrated, as if Jessica had briefed them on exactly how to make me feel inadequate. Even the photographer seemed to be in on it. When it came time for family photos, he kept asking if I had a +1, looking genuinely confused when I said no. "Everyone else is paired up," he complained, repositioning me awkwardly at the edge of the group. The breaking point came during the bouquet toss. The DJ's voice boomed across the ballroom. All the single ladies to the dance floor. I tried to hide behind a pillar, but Vanessa spotted me and grabbed my arm. "Come on, Olivia. This could be your lucky day," she said with false enthusiasm. I found myself pushed into a circle of mostly 20-something women, Daniel's younger cousins and Jessica's single friends, all giggling and jostling for position. Standing among them, I felt ancient and desperate. Jessica looked directly at me from the elevated platform where she stood, bouquet in hand. She smiled, not a warm smile, but the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, and deliberately threw the bouquet in the opposite direction. A 22-year-old named Amber caught it while the crowd cheered. Jessica hugged her and announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Looks like Olivia will have to wait a little longer." The laughter that followed felt like sandpaper against my skin. I saw people looking at me with that mixture of pity and relief that comes from witnessing someone else's humiliation. I retreated to my table, fighting back tears of anger and embarrassment. This was supposed to be a celebration of love, but Jessica had turned it into a public execution of my self-esteem. I seriously considered leaving, just disappearing before anyone noticed I was gone, before I gave Jessica the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I was gathering my purse when a deep voice spoke quietly behind me. "Act like you're with me." I turned around, startled, to see a man in an impeccably tailored navy suit. He was tall, with dark hair, and warm brown eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners. There was something magnetic about him, a quiet confidence that made him stand out even in a room full of people. "Excuse me?" I whispered back. "Your sister just spent 10 minutes telling my business associate about how worried she is about you being alone," he said, sliding into the chair next to mine with casual grace. "I'm guessing you didn't ask her to share your personal life with strangers." He was right. Across the room, I could see Jessica gesturing in my direction while talking to a group of Daniel's colleagues, probably explaining how sad it was that I couldn't find anyone to love me. "You don't mind, do you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he was already committed to whatever plan he had in mind. I shook my head, too surprised to speak. For the first time all evening, I didn't feel invisible. "I'm Ethan," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Daniel's cousin from Chicago. And you're Olivia, the sister who apparently needs saving from eternal spinsterhood." Despite everything, I laughed. "That's me, the family charity case." "Well, not anymore," he said with a smile that was both reassuring and slightly mischievous. Ethan draped his arm casually along the back of my chair and leaned in to speak to me like we'd known each other for years. Almost immediately I noticed heads turning in our direction. Jessica, mid-conversation with the wedding planner, did a double take when she saw us. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she excused herself and started walking toward our table. "Olivia," she called out, her voice an octave higher than usual. "I didn't know you knew Ethan." "Old friends," Ethan said smoothly, his hand touching mine on the table. "We lost touch for a while, but you know how these things go." Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly, her perfect wedding composure cracking just enough to show her confusion. "Really? Olivia never mentioned you." "I try to keep my private life private," I said, finally finding my voice and some of my confidence. "You know how I am about boundaries." The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica had spent the entire evening broadcasting my lack of a love life, and now she was fishing for details about a relationship that didn't exist. "How wonderful," Jessica said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "How long have you two been reconnecting?" "Long enough," Ethan said with a smile that gave away nothing and everything at once. As Jessica walked away, clearly frustrated by the lack of information, Ethan turned to me with a conspiratorial whisper. "She looks like she just bit into a lemon." I couldn't help but smile. She's not used to not knowing everything about my life or having me upstage her in any way. "Good," he said. "Let's keep her guessing." For the next hour, Ethan played the part perfectly. He brought me drinks from the bar, laughed at my jokes, and touched my hand just enough to make our connection believable. But more than that, He actually listened when I talked. He asked about my work in digital marketing, my love of hiking, and my recent road trip to California. "You're not what I expected," he said during a quiet moment between songs. "What did you expect?" "Based on your sister's description, someone desperate and pathetic," he said bluntly. "Instead, I'm sitting with someone intelligent, funny, and honestly, I can't figure out why you're single." "Because I have standards," I said without thinking. He laughed, a genuine warm sound that made something inside my chest loosen. "Good for you." By this point, Jessica was openly staring at our table. I could see her whispering to Vanessa, who kept glancing over at us with obvious curiosity. Daniel's family members, who had pitied me earlier, were now looking at Ethan with interest and approval, clearly recognizing his social status and wondering how I'd managed to land someone so obviously successful. The revenge was already sweeter than I'd imagined. But Ethan wasn't done. When the band started playing slow songs, he stood up and extended his hand with a confident smile. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a question. On the dance floor, with his hand on my waist and mine on his shoulder, I felt the eyes of every guest who had offered me unsolicited dating advice. But instead of feeling exposed, I felt protected. Ethan moved with the kind of natural rhythm that suggested he'd grown up taking dancing lessons, and being in his arms felt surprisingly natural. "Your sister is watching," Ethan murmured, as we swayed to the music. "I know," I said. "She looks like she's going to explode." Mission accomplished then. I looked up at him, this stranger who had given me back my dignity with a simple gesture. "Almost," he said. That's when Jessica made her move. "Mind if I cut in?" she said, appearing beside us with Daniel in tow. Her wedding smile was stretched tight across her face, and I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "Actually, yes," Ethan said politely but firmly. "We're having a moment." Jessica's face went through several expressions before settling on forced brightness. "Of course, I just wanted to say how happy I am that Olivia finally found someone. We were all so worried about her." "Were you?" Ethan asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "Because from what I've observed tonight, it seems like you've been more interested in broadcasting her single status than supporting her." The directness of his statement left Jessica speechless for a moment. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside her, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. We just want what's best for Olivia," Jessica stammered, her composure cracking. "Then maybe treat her with the respect she deserves instead of using her love life as entertainment for your wedding guests," Ethan said calmly. I had never seen Jessica look so rattled. Her perfect wedding confidence was completely shattered, and for the first time all evening, she was the one who looked small. "I don't know what Olivia told you, but—" "She didn't have to tell me anything," Ethan interrupted. "I have eyes. I can see how you've been treating her all evening." Daniel finally stepped in, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of the confrontation. "Maybe we should let them get back to dancing." As they walked away, Jessica's composure was completely destroyed. I could see her frantically whispering to Vanessa, probably trying to figure out who Ethan was and how I'd managed to land someone so obviously out of my league. That felt really good, I admitted, as we continued dancing. "We're not done yet," Ethan said with a smile that made my heart skip. For the rest of the evening, Ethan made sure I was never alone. When dinner was served, he requested that we be moved to a better table, something about his dietary restrictions requiring him to be closer to the kitchen. The staff, clearly knowing who Daniel's family was, accommodated us immediately. Our new table was front and center, where everyone could see us laughing and talking like a real couple. Jessica's friends, who had ignored me earlier, suddenly wanted to chat and meet Ethan. Daniel's relatives, who had pitied me, now treated me with newfound respect and curiosity about my mysterious boyfriend. Eleanor Cooper, who had suggested lowering my standards earlier, now wanted to know all about Ethan's family background. When she learned he was a successful software engineer who had started his own company, her attitude toward me changed completely. "Olivia, you dark horse," she said with genuine admiration. "You never mentioned you were seeing someone so accomplished." But the final act of revenge came during the garter toss. When Daniel prepared to throw the garter to all the single men, Ethan stepped forward with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. "Wait!" Jessica called out desperately. "Ethan, you're not single." Ethan looked at me, then back at Jessica with a mysterious smile. "Actually, I am. Olivia and I are taking things slow, getting reacquainted." The garter landed directly in his hands. Whether by luck or Daniel's aim, I'll never know. But the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially Jessica. According to tradition, Ethan was supposed to place the garter on the leg of whoever caught the bouquet, but young Amber had left early. "Looks like we need a volunteer," the DJ announced. Ethan looked at me with a question in his eyes. I nodded. The crowd cheered as I sat in the chair, and Ethan knelt before me, sliding the garter onto my leg with a gentleness that felt surprisingly intimate for an act of pretense. The moment felt charged with possibility, and I found myself wondering if the chemistry between us was entirely fake. Jessica's face was a mask of barely controlled fury, as she watched her single, pathetic sister become the center of positive attention at her own wedding. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Ethan walked me to my car. The parking lot was quiet, away from the watchful eyes of wedding guests and my family. "Thank you," I said, finally alone with him. "I know tonight was just an act, but you saved me from the most humiliating experience of my life." "What makes you think it was just an act?" he asked, his expression serious. My heart stopped. Because you don't even know me." "I know enough," he said, stepping closer. "I know you're kind, even when people don't deserve it. I know you're strong enough to endure a night of humiliation without fighting back. I know you're beautiful inside and out, and I know your sister is an idiot for not seeing how lucky she is to have you as family." I felt tears threatening, but this time they weren't from humiliation. "Ethan," I said, not sure what I wanted to say next. "I know this started as a rescue mission," he said. "But somewhere between the first dance and now, it stopped being pretend for me." He handed me a business card with his personal number written on the back in elegant handwriting. "If you want to see me again, not for revenge, not to prove a point just because you want to call me." I took the card with shaking hands. "What if I want to call you tonight?" He smiled, that same confident smile that had first caught my attention. "Then I'll answer." 3 months later, Ethan and I were officially dating. 6 months after that, we moved in together. And exactly 1 year after Jessica's wedding, he proposed to me during a hike to our favorite overlook spot, a completely different setting from the lavish spectacle of my sister's wedding. Jessica's reaction to our engagement announcement was everything I could have hoped for. The sister who had spent years making me feel inadequate for being single was now forced to watch me plan a wedding with a man who clearly adored me and who had built a successful tech company that was now making headlines. But the real revenge wasn't in proving Jessica wrong about my worthiness of love. It was in realizing that I didn't need her validation anymore. Ethan's respect and genuine affection had shown me what I deserved, and I was never going to settle for less again. Our wedding was smaller than Jessica's, but infinitely more joyful. Instead of using the occasion to humiliate anyone, we celebrated with people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. Jessica gave a speech as my maid of honor, something she'd insisted on despite our complicated history. She talked about how happy she was to see me find love, how Ethan was clearly perfect for me, how she'd always known I'd find someone special. The revisionist history was breathtaking, but I didn't care anymore. I had something more valuable than her approval. I had someone who saw my worth from the very beginning. Looking back, Jessica's wedding was one of the worst nights of my life. Her cruelty showed me how I'd been allowing people to treat me, but it also led me to Ethan. Without her humiliation, I never would have been vulnerable enough to accept help from a stranger. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us exactly what we need to change our lives. Jessica wanted to make me feel small and pathetic. Instead, she created the circumstances for me to meet my future husband. The irony is perfect. In trying to prove I was unlovable, She delivered me directly to the love of my life. I still remember the look on her face when Ethan and I announced we were expecting our first child, just as her marriage to Daniel was hitting rocky waters. But that's another story entirely. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories, because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.